The rain in the city didn't wash away the sins. It just made the blood slicker on the pavement. Martha pulled her thin coat tighter around her shivering frame, pressing her back against the cold brick wall of the alley. The smell of wet garbage and stale ozone filled her nose. Beside her, 5-year-old Luna buried her face into Martha's stomach, trying to disappear. They were invisible here, just another woman and child the world had forgotten. But the man walking toward the black sedan wasn't invisible. He was a jagged scar on the night. Jang Dae-hyun moved with the predatory grace of a tiger stalking through tall grass. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than Martha had earned in her entire life. His hair was slicked back, his jaw set hard, and his eyes, even from this distance, looked like shattered glass. He was the kind of man who didn't walk around puddles. The world moved for him. He reached for the trunk of his car, his hand hovering over the latch. Martha's heart hammered against her ribs. She had seen the men earlier, the ones in the blue van. She had seen what they did to the car when the owner wasn't looking. If this man opened that trunk, the wire she saw them connect would trip. She shouldn't get involved. In this part of the city, seeing things got you killed. Dae-hyun's fingers brushed the cold metal of the trunk. Wait. The scream tore out of Martha's throat before she could stop it. Dae-hyun spun around. The movement was a blur. In less than a second, a suppressed pistol was leveled directly at Martha's forehead. The black barrel was perfectly steady, unbothered by the rain. Martha froze, her hands instinctively flying up to shield Luna's head. Her dark skin was soaked, glowing under the flickering amber street lamp. She couldn't breathe. The look in his eyes promised death. It wasn't anger. It was total indifference. "Give me one reason why I shouldn't put a bullet in you right now," Dae-hyun said. His voice was deep, smooth, and terrifyingly calm. Luna peeked out from behind Martha's legs. Her big brown eyes were wide with terror, but she pointed a shaking finger at the luxury car. "Don't open the trunk," the little girl whispered, her voice trembling but clear. "The bad men. They put a red light inside." Dae-hyun didn't lower the gun. He didn't even blink. "Who sent you?" "No one," Martha cried out, stepping in front of Luna. "We were just looking for cardboard. I saw 2 men. They messed with the lock. Please, just don't touch it." Dae-hyun studied her face. He looked for the lie. He saw the frayed edges of her sleeves, the exhaustion etched under her eyes, and the fierce, protective way she held the child. Slowly, calculate, he lowered the gun an inch. Keeping his eyes on Martha, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek device. He pressed a button, popping the trunk remotely from a distance. Click. Boom. The explosion wasn't massive, but it was vicious. A localized incendiary charge blew the trunk lid clean off, sending a fireball rolling into the rainy sky. Heat blasted against their faces. If he had been standing there, if he had manually lifted that latch, his upper body would have been erased. Debris rained down around them. The silence that followed was deafening. Dae-hyun stared at the burning wreckage of his car, the flames reflected in his dark, unreadable eyes. He turned back to Martha. The indifference was gone. Now, there was something else. Obsession. He holstered his weapon and took a step toward them. Martha stepped back, clutching Luna, her back hitting the wet brick wall. There was nowhere to run. He stopped inches from her. She could smell expensive cologne mixed with the smoke of the explosion. He towered over her, blocking out the light, blocking out the rain. "You saved my life," Dae-hyun murmured, his voice low and dangerous. He reached out, his leather-gloved finger tilting Martha's chin up. "Which means your life belongs to me now." Martha trembled. "We don't want anything. Just let us go." Dae-hyun opened the back door of the SUV that had just pulled up behind him, his security team, finally arriving seconds too late. "Get in," he commanded. It wasn't an offer. "You know too much to walk away, and I never leave a debt unpaid. I'm glad you're here. If you love stories about dangerous men who break their own rules for love, hit the like button right now. Subscribe to this channel, and drop in the comments where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches." The heavy door of the armored SUV slammed shut, sealing out the noise of the city. The silence inside was instant and suffocating. It smelled of sterile air conditioning and aggression. Martha pressed herself into the corner of the leather seat, pulling Luna onto her lap. The child was shivering, her small teeth chattering from the damp cold. Martha felt the warmth of the heated seats seeping through her wet clothes, a luxury that felt like a trap. Dae-hyun sat across from them. He didn't look at them. He was typing on a phone, his thumbs moving with lethal speed. Drive, he said to the driver. The partition glass was up. They were in a soundproof box with a monster. The car surged forward, leaving the burning wreckage of the sedan behind. Dae-hyun finally looked up. Under the dim interior lights, the angles of his face looked sharper. He pulled a pristine white handkerchief from his breast pocket and held it out. Martha hesitated. Her hands were covered in alley grime. "Take it," Dae-hyun ordered softly. "Dry the child's face." Martha took the cloth. It was silk. She gently dabbed the rainwater from Luna's cheeks, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. "You said you were looking for cardboard," Dae-hyun said. He wasn't asking. He was stating a fact he intended to dissect. At 11 p.m., in the territory of the Red Vipers. "I don't know who the Vipers are," Martha whispered, keeping her eyes low, avoiding his gaze. "I know that the bakery throws out their boxes at 10:45. We needed insulation for the windows. It's getting cold." Dae-hyun studied her. He had been raised in a world where every kindness was a transaction, and every coincidence was an assassination attempt. He had clawed his way to the top of the syndicate by trusting no one. He leaned forward. The space between them vanished. Martha stopped breathing. "Two men," Dae-hyun said. "Describe them." One was tall, had a tattoo on his neck, a snake eating a skull, Martha stammered. Dae-hyun's eyes narrowed slightly. A flicker of recognition. Betrayal. It wasn't a rival gang. It was his own lieutenants. The men he paid to protect him were the ones planting the bomb. A dark, cold rage settled over his features. It was terrifying to witness. He sat back, straightening his cuffs. "You have nowhere to go," he said. It was a statement. "We have a shelter," Martha lied. "You have nothing," Dae-hyun corrected. "I saw your shoes. I saw the girl's coat. If I let you out of this car, you die." "Why?" Martha dared to look at him. "Because you saw the faces of the men who tried to kill me," Dae-hyun replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "If they know you're alive, they will hunt you down to tie up loose ends. You are a witness." Luna whimpered in her sleep. Dae-hyun's gaze flicked to the child, and for a split second, the ice in his eyes thawed. Just a fraction. "You saved the devil tonight, Martha," he said, using her name for the first time. It sounded foreign and heavy on his tongue. "And now the devil has to keep you safe." The car slowed down. Through the tinted windows, Martha saw they were entering the underground garage of a massive glass skyscraper. It looked like a fortress. "Welcome to hell," Dae-hyun muttered as the doors unlocked. The elevator rose so fast Martha's ears popped. The numbers on the digital display climbed higher and higher, 20, 30, 40, leaving the grid of the street far below. When the doors slid open, they didn't reveal a home. They revealed a fortress of ice and steel. Dae-hyun stepped out first. His penthouse was massive, walled entirely in floor-to-ceiling glass. The city lights of Seoul twinkled below like fallen stars. But inside, it was dark. Minimalist furniture sat like islands in a black sea of marble floors. It smelled of nothing. No food, no flowers, no life. Just cold, filtered air. Martha hesitated at the threshold, clutching Luna's hand so tight her knuckles turned ash-gray. "Inside," Dae-hyun commanded, loosening his tie as he walked toward a liquor cabinet. "The elevator requires a biometric scan to go down. You can't leave." "You're locking us in?" Martha's voice rose, panic clawing at her throat. "This is kidnapping." Dae-hyun poured a glass of amber liquid. He didn't drink it. He just stared at the liquid, swirling it. "Kidnapping is if I ask for a ransom," he said, turning to face them. "This is storage. You are evidence. Valuable evidence." He took a sip, the burn of the alcohol matching the fire in his gut. He had rats in his organization. Men he had fed were trying to kill him. And this woman, this stranger with dirt on her face, was the only thread he could pull to unravel the conspiracy. "There is a guest room down the hall to the left," Dae-hyun gestured with the glass. "It has a shower. Use it. You smell like the alley." It was an insult, but delivered with such flat practicality that it stung worse than a slap. Martha stiffened. She wanted to scream at him, to fight, but she looked down at Luna. The little girl was eyeing a bowl of green apples on the sleek granite island like they were gold. She was hungry. They were safe from the rain. "Come on, baby," Martha whispered, scooping Luna up. She wouldn't give this man the satisfaction of seeing her break. She walked down the long, shadowed hallway. As she reached the door he indicated, she heard Dae-hyun's phone ring. She paused, leaving the door cracked just an inch. Dae-hyun answered. The English he spoke now was different, rougher, darker. I know it was the Vipers, he said into the phone. His voice dropped an octave, vibrating with lethal promise. Find the one with the snake tattoo. Don't kill him. A pause. Bring him to the basement. I want to peel the skin off his neck myself. Slowly, Martha slammed the bedroom door shut and locked it. Her breath came in ragged gasps. She pressed her back against the wood, sliding down to the floor. She hadn't been saved. She had been collected by a monster. Outside in the living room, Dae-hyun stared at the closed door. He finished his drink in one swallow. He looked at his hand, it was trembling slightly. Not from fear, from rage. He walked to the window and looked out at the city that wanted him dead. Nobody touches what is mine, he whispered to the reflection in the glass. Morning didn't break in the penthouse. It just slowly illuminated the gray. Martha stood in the kitchen that cost more than her childhood home. The refrigerator was stocked with things she had only seen in magazines. Imported cheeses, sparkling water, organic eggs. Survival instinct took over. She found a pan. The smell of frying eggs and bacon sizzled through the sterile, cold air of the apartment. It was a warm, human scent in a place designed for robots. Luna sat on a high stool, her legs dangling, swinging back and forth. She was eating toast like it was the last meal on Earth. Stop. The word was quiet, but it cut through the sizzling noise like a knife. Martha spun around, dropping the spatula. Dae-hyun stood in the doorway. He wasn't wearing the suit jacket. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms roped with muscle and veins. On his right forearm, a fresh bandage was seeping a tiny dot of red. He looked at the pan, then at Luna, then at Martha. He looked like he had found an alien species in his kitchen. I didn't say you could touch anything, Dae-hyun said. Walking into the room, the space suddenly felt very small. My daughter was hungry, Martha said, her voice shaking but her chin high. You locked us in. You didn't leave instructions. I did what mothers do. I fed her. Dae-hyun stopped in front of the stove. He turned off the burner with a sharp click. He picked up a piece of bacon from the plate with his bare fingers, inspecting it. Grease, he muttered, looking around his pristine white marble counters. You are making a mess. I'll clean it, Martha snapped. Dae-hyun turned his head slowly to look at her. His eyes were dark pools of exhaustion and violence. Do not speak back to me. You are here because I allow it. You are alive because I allow it. Luna froze, the toast halfway to her mouth. Dae-hyun looked at the child. He reached out. Martha flinched, stepping forward to intercept him, but he just pushed the plate of eggs closer to the girl. Eat faster, he told Luna. We leave in 10 minutes. Leave? Martha asked. You said we couldn't leave. The situation has changed, Dae-hyun said, walking to the counter where his gun holster lay. He strapped it on, checking the chamber of the pistol with a metallic clack-clack. My security team found the leak. The safe house isn't safe anymore. They know you're here. He looked at Martha. His gaze dropped to her throat, where a pulse was fluttering wildly. Stay close to me, he said, his voice dropping to that terrifyingly calm register. If you stray more than 2 feet from my side, I cannot stop the bullet that is meant for you. He moved to the door, expecting them to follow without question. The hunt is on. If you're scared for Martha and Luna, hit the like button. If you want to see if Dae-hyun can actually protect them when the bullets start flying, subscribe to the channel. I'm curious, do you think he's keeping them alive for them, or for himself? Let me know in the comments. The elevator descent felt like falling into a grave. When the doors opened to the basement garage, the air was heavy with the smell of oil and exhaust. It was too quiet. The usual hum of the city was gone, replaced by a suffocating stillness. Dae-hyun stepped out first. His body was a coiled spring. He didn't look at Martha, but his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was iron. Walk fast, he whispered. Don't run. They moved toward a silver sedan parked in the shadows. Martha clutched Luna to her chest, her shoes making soft slapping sounds on the concrete. Every shadow looked like a gunman. They were 10 feet from the car when the world exploded again. Crack. A bullet smashed into the concrete pillar inches from Martha's face. Dust and stone chips sprayed into her eyes. Down! Dae-hyun roared. He didn't just push her. He tackled her. He threw Martha and Luna behind the engine block of a parked SUV as automatic gunfire shredded the air. The sound was deafening, a continuous, thundering hammer against the metal of the cars. Martha curled into a ball, covering Luna's ears. She was screaming, but she couldn't hear herself over the noise. Dae-hyun wasn't screaming. He was working. He popped up from behind the cover, his pistol extending in a fluid motion. Bang, bang. 2 sharp cracks cut through the chaotic spray of bullets. A man in the distance screamed and fell silent. Dae-hyun dropped back down, ejecting a magazine and slamming a fresh one home. His face was terrifying. There was no fear, only calculation. "Stay here," he ordered. "No." Martha grabbed his sleeve. "Don't leave us." He looked at her hand on his arm. His eyes burned with dark intensity. "If I stay, we all die. Cover the child's eyes." He moved. He didn't run away from the fire. He ran into it. Martha squeezed her eyes shut, pressing Luna's face into her coat. She heard the wet thud of bodies hitting the floor. She heard the distinct, sickening crunch of bone meeting metal. Then, silence. The ringing in her ears was high and sharp. "Get up." Dae-hyun was back. He was breathing hard, a fine sheen of sweat on his forehead. There was a splash of red on his white shirt that wasn't his. He held the keys to the silver sedan. "We have 30 seconds before the police or more of them arrive," he said, pulling her up. He didn't ask if she was okay. He checked her for bullet holes with a quick scan, then shoved her toward the car. As she scrambled into the back seat, Martha saw the bodies. 3 men. They were broken, twisted in unnatural angles. Dae-hyun hadn't just shot them. He had dismantled them. He slid into the driver's seat, the engine roaring to life. He glanced in the rearview mirror, locking eyes with her. "Now you see," he said, spinning the wheel and peeling out of the garage. "Now you see what I am." The rain lashed against the windshield, blurring the neon lights of Seoul into streaks of red and blue. The wipers slapped back and forth, a hypnotic rhythm against the silence inside the car. Dae-hyun drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the gear shift, close to his gun. His eyes flicked constantly to the rearview mirror, hunting for headlights, hunting for shadows. In the back, Luna had finally stopped crying. She was asleep, her head heavy on Martha's lap. Martha stared at the back of Dae-hyun's neck. She could see a smudge of gunpowder on his collar. She could smell the metallic tang of blood filling the small space. It made her stomach turn, but she couldn't look away. "Where are we going?" Martha asked. Her voice sounded brittle. "Somewhere off the grid," Dae-hyun replied, not looking back. "My hotels are watched. My apartments are compromised. We are going to the old district." The car turned off the highway, navigating a maze of narrow, potholed streets, lined with shuttered factories and rusted fences. The glamour of the city was gone. This was the graveyard of industry. He pulled the car into a derelict textile warehouse. The massive metal door groaned as it rolled up automatically, triggered by a sensor in his car. They drove into the dark belly of the building, and the door slammed shut behind them. Total darkness. Then, the headlights cut out. "Out," Dae-hyun said. Martha fumbled with the door handle, her hands shaking. Dae-hyun appeared at her side, opening it for her. "Give her to me," he said, reaching for the sleeping child. "No," Martha recoiled, pulling Luna tighter. "I can carry her." "You are shaking," Dae-hyun stated flatly. "You will drop her. Give her to me." He didn't wait for permission. He reached in and scooped Luna up with surprising gentleness. The juxtaposition was jarring. The same hands that had snapped a man's neck 10 minutes ago were now cradling a child's head so it wouldn't flop. Martha climbed out, her legs feeling like jelly. They walked up a rusted iron staircase to a loft office overlooking the empty factory floor. Dae-hyun kicked the door open. The room was sparse. A leather couch, a small kitchenette, a wall of monitors. It was a command center, not a home. He laid Luna down on the couch and covered her with his suit jacket. It was stained with blood near the cuff, but he didn't seem to care. He turned to Martha. Under the harsh fluorescent light of the office, she looked shattered. Her clothes were wet, her hair plastered to her skull. Dae-hyun walked to a metal cabinet and pulled out a first aid kit. He tossed it onto the desk. "Sit," he ordered, pointing to a chair. "I'm not hurt," Martha said. "You have a cut on your cheek." "Glass from the garage pillar," he said. He opened a bottle of antiseptic. The smell was sharp and clinical. He walked over to her. He didn't hand her the cotton. He held it himself. "Look at me," he commanded. Martha looked up. His face was inches from hers. She could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. She could feel the heat radiating off his body, the heat of violence and adrenaline. He dabbed the cut on her cheek. It stung, but his touch was precise, careful. "Why are you doing this?" Martha whispered. The fear was still there, but curiosity was creeping in. Dae-hyun paused, his thumb hovering near her jaw. He looked at the cut, then into her eyes. The mask of the monster slipped, just for a heartbeat. "Because," he said, his voice rough, "you are the only thing in this city that isn't trying to kill me." He pulled back, the cold mask slamming back into place. "Get some sleep. I will take the first watch." The rain hammered against the corrugated metal roof of the warehouse. It sounded like static, drowning out the world outside. Martha couldn't sleep. The leather chair was uncomfortable, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw the muzzle flash of the gun in the garage. She watched Dae-hyun. He was standing in front of the wall of monitors, his back to her. He had taken off his shoulder holster, laying the gun on the desk next to a half-empty bottle of whiskey. The blue light from the screens washed over him, making him look like a ghost. "Stop staring," Dae-hyun said. He didn't turn around. "I can't sleep," Martha replied, sitting up. Her body ached. "Who are they? The men with the snake tattoos?" Dae-hyun was silent for a long moment. He tapped a key on the keyboard, bringing up a grainy image from the garage security footage. He zoomed in on the dead man's neck, the snake eating the skull. "In my world," Dae-hyun began, his voice low, "loyalty is written in ink. The snake represents the Ouroboros, eternal life, eternal power." He turned to face her. The fatigue was setting in, deepening the shadows under his eyes. "It is the sigil of the southern faction, my faction." Martha frowned, confusion knitting her brow. "Your own men." "My brother's men," Dae-hyun corrected. The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Martha gasped softly. "Your brother wants you dead?" Dae-hyun picked up the whiskey glass. He didn't drink. He looked at the amber liquid as if it held the answers. "Kwon-woo, he believes I am. Soft." Dae-hyun let out a dark, dry chuckle that had no humor in it. "He believes I have become too corporate, too clean. He wants to bring back the old ways, the bloody ways." He looked at Martha. For the first time, he looked at her not as a witness, but as a person. "He planted that bomb to erase me. If I had opened that trunk, I would be ash, and he would be king." Martha looked at the sleeping child on the couch. "So we are caught in a family feud." "No," Dae-hyun said, setting the glass down with a sharp clink. He walked over to her, looming tall and dangerous in the dim light. "You are not caught in anything. You are collateral damage, and Kwon-woo does not leave witnesses." He leaned down, placing a hand on the arm of her chair, trapping her. "He knows you saw the face of his soldier. He will come for you, not to talk, to silence you." Martha felt the heat of his body, the scent of danger. She looked up into his eyes and saw the promise of violence, but also the promise of a shield. "So what do we do?" she whispered. Dae-hyun's eyes drifted to her lips, then back up to her eyes. "We stop running," he said. "We hunt." Suddenly, a red light on the console began to blink, a silent alarm. Dae-hyun spun around, his eyes locking onto the perimeter monitor. A black van had just pulled up to the outer gate of the derelict factory. "Damn it," he hissed, grabbing his gun. They tracked the car. Dae-hyun moved faster than thought. He slapped a button on the console, killing the monitors. The room plunged into absolute blackness. The only light came from the faint gray moonlight, filtering through the high, grimy windows of the factory floor below. "Get up," he hissed. Martha scrambled to her feet, clutching Luna, who was now awake and whimpering softly. Dae-hyun's hand clamped over the child's mouth, gentle but firm. "Silence," he whispered into Martha's ear. "If she cries, we die." He dragged them toward a heavy metal grate in the floor. He kicked it open. Below was a maintenance crawl space, a tangle of pipes and darkness. It smelled of rust and stagnant water. "Get in," he ordered. "It's too small," Martha panicked, looking into the hole. "It's bulletproof," Dae-hyun countered. He shoved them down. "Stay flat. Cover your ears. Do not come out until I say my name." He slammed the grate shut over them. Martha lay in the cramped darkness, pulling Luna under her body. Through the slats of the grate, she could see the office above. She saw Dae-hyun check his magazine one last time. Then, he didn't hide behind the desk. He climbed up into the rafters, disappearing into the steel skeleton of the roof like a bat. Below, the factory door smashed open. Tires screeched. Doors slammed. Clear the floor, a voice shouted. Korean, rough, aggressive. Flashlight beams cut through the dusty air, sweeping back and forth like lightsabers. Martha counted 4 beams. 4 men, heavily armed. They moved toward the stairs. Their boots clanged loudly on the metal steps. Clang, clang, clang. They reached the office door. One man kicked it open, his rifle raised. Clear, he shouted. They stepped inside, sweeping the room. They saw the whiskey glass. They saw the open first aid kit. They were just here, one man growled. Find them. Suddenly, a drop of liquid fell from the ceiling. It landed on the leader's shoulder. He touched it. Red. He looked up. Thwip. A single shot from the dark rafters. The leader dropped without a sound, a hole in the center of his forehead. Chaos erupted. Contact, up high. The remaining 3 men opened fire at the ceiling. Bullets shredded the insulation, raining debris down on the office. Martha squeezed her eyes shut, her hands over Luna's ears, screaming silently into the dirt. Dae-hyun dropped from the shadows behind them. He didn't use the gun. He was too close. He used a knife. It was a blur of violence, a slash to a tendon, a thrust to a throat. He moved like smoke. The men were screaming, firing blindly, but he was already gone, moving to the next target. In 10 seconds, it was over. Silence returned to the warehouse, heavier than before. Martha trembled, staring up through the grate. A pair of expensive Italian shoes stepped into her view. They were slick with fresh blood. Martha. His voice was calm, unshaken. Come out. He just took out 4 hitmen without breaking a sweat. That is the kind of protection you need in a world like this. If you think Dae-hyun is a savage, hit like. If you think he's a hero, hit subscribe. I want to know, would you trust him or run from him? Let's see who survives the night. The silence in the warehouse was heavy, broken only by the dripping of something wet onto the metal floor. Dae-hyun reached down and hauled the heavy grate aside. He offered a hand to help Martha out. His palm was slick with red. Martha stared at the hand. For a second, she couldn't move. The image of him dropping from the ceiling, a blur of lethal precision, played on a loop in her mind. He wasn't a man. He was a machine built for death. Take it, Dae-hyun said. His voice was tight. We don't have time for fear. Martha ignored his hand. She grabbed the edge of the floor and pulled herself up, her muscles screaming. She turned back to lift Luna, shielding the child's face into her shoulder immediately. Don't look, baby. Keep your eyes closed. Count to 100. Martha stood up and looked around the office. It was a slaughterhouse. The walls were splattered. The men, the ones who had hunted them, were piles of broken limbs. She looked at Dae-hyun. He was wiping his knife on the jacket of the dead leader. His face was blank, unbothered. You! Martha's voice failed her. She took a step back, clutching Luna tighter. Dae-hyun straightened up, slipping the knife back into a sheath at his ankle. He saw her step back. He saw the terror in her eyes. Not terror for him, terror of him. Something flickered in his chest. A sharp, unfamiliar pain. He was used to people fearing him. He thrived on it. But seeing this woman, the one who had warned him, the one with the soft eyes, look at him like he was a nightmare, it burned. I did what was necessary, he said, his voice dropping to a defensive growl. They came to kill the child. Would you prefer I let them? No, Martha whispered. But you didn't just stop them. You enjoyed it. Dae-hyun stepped closer, ignoring the blood on his shoes. I don't enjoy taking out the trash, Martha. I just don't cry over it. He knelt by the dead leader and dug a phone out of the man's pocket. He used the dead man's thumb to unlock it. He scrolled through the messages. His jaw tightened. Target confirmed. Warehouse Sector 4. Leave no survivors. Bring the girl to me alive. I want to see what she knows. The message was from Kwon-woo. Dae-hyun stood up, smashing the phone under his heel. The crunch echoed in the room. He knows, Dae-hyun said, looking at the door. He knows I have you, and he wants you. Why? Martha asked, her voice trembling. Because you are my weakness now, Dae-hyun said. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and dangerous. As long as you are alive, I am distracted. I am vulnerable. He walked over to her. He raised a hand to touch her face, then stopped, realizing his fingers were stained. He lowered his hand, clenching it into a fist. I have to take you somewhere else, he said, turning away. Somewhere. Even my brother cannot touch. Where? To the only person in this world I fear more than him. The city faded into the rearview mirror, replaced by the winding, dark roads of the mountains surrounding Seoul. The neon glow was gone. There was only the headlights cutting through the thick mountain fog and the silent, imposing blackness of the trees. Martha watched the speedometer. Dae-hyun was driving fast, but with precision. He hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. "Who is she?" Martha asked quietly. "The person you fear." Dae-hyun didn't take his eyes off the road. "Madam Yi, she isn't part of the syndicate. She is the syndicate. She raised me. She raised Kwon-woo. She decides who sits on the throne and who gets buried under it." Martha swallowed hard. "And you think she will help us?" "She values order," Dae-hyun replied. "Kwon-woo has created chaos. She will hate that." He slowed the car down. They turned onto a gravel path marked by 2 stone statues of roaring lions. A massive traditional gate, a Hanok entrance, loomed out of the mist. It was beautiful, ancient, and terrifying. Guards in dark suits emerged from the shadows. They didn't raise their weapons when they saw Dae-hyun's face, but they didn't smile either. They bowed low, opening the heavy wooden gates. Dae-hyun parked in the courtyard. The air here smelled of pine needles and wood smoke. It was silent, a stark contrast to the gunfire of the warehouse. "Leave the gun," Dae-hyun said, checking his reflection in the mirror and wiping a smear of blood from his jaw. "No weapons inside. It is disrespectful." Martha unbuckled Luna. The child was awake now, staring at the strange, curved roofs of the house with wide eyes. "Stay behind me," Dae-hyun instructed. "Do not speak unless she asks you a question. And do not look her in the eye." They walked up the stone steps. The sliding paper doors opened before they even touched them. Inside, the room was warm, lit by soft lanterns. The floor was polished wood that gleamed like glass. In the center of the room, sitting on a silk cushion behind a low tea table, sat an elderly woman. Her hair was white as snow, pulled back in a severe bun. Her face was a map of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp, black beads. She sipped tea from a delicate porcelain cup. She didn't look up as they entered. Dae-hyun stopped 10 feet away. He dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead to the floor in a deep traditional bow. "Grandmother," he said. His voice held a tone Martha had never heard: reverence and fear. Madam Yi set the cup down. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. "You smell of blood, Dae-hyun," she said. Her voice was like dry leaves scraping on pavement. "And you bring a stray dog into my house." Dae-hyun rose to a kneeling position, but kept his head lowered. "The stray saved my life. Kwon-woo has broken the code. He tried to kill me with a bomb in the city. He has declared war." Madam Yi finally looked up. Her gaze bypassed Dae-hyun and locked onto Martha. It felt like being X-rayed. She saw the fear, the poverty, the defiance. "Come here, child," Madam Yi commanded. Martha froze. Dae-hyun didn't move, but his hand twitched at his side, reaching for a phantom gun that wasn't there. "Go," he whispered to Martha. "It's okay." Martha walked forward, holding Luna's hand. She stopped in front of the tea table. Madam Yi reached out a withered hand and touched the collar of Luna's cheap coat. Then she looked at Martha. "He is in love with you," the old woman stated. It wasn't a question. Martha blinked. "No, I am just a witness." Madam Yi let out a short, harsh laugh. "A man like him does not bring a witness to the sanctuary. He buries witnesses in the woods. He brings you here because he cannot bear to bury you." She turned her gaze back to Dae-hyun. The air in the room grew instantly colder. "But love makes you stupid, Dae-hyun. And I cannot have a stupid king." She clapped her hands. From the shadows behind the paper screens, 4 men stepped out. They weren't wearing suits. They were wearing traditional martial arts robes, holding long wooden staves. "If you want her protected," Madam Yi said, pouring herself another cup of tea, "you must prove you are still strong enough to hold the crown. Defeat my guards, without weapons." Dae-hyun stood up slowly. He unbuttoned his blood-stained shirt cuffs. "And if I lose?" he asked. Madam Yi took a sip. "Then I will kill her myself, to save you from your weakness." The room exploded into motion. The first guard lunged, his wooden staff whistling through the air. Dae-hyun didn't retreat. He stepped into the strike. Crack. The wood slammed into his forearm, a sound like a gunshot. Dae-hyun didn't flinch. He grabbed the staff, yanked the guard forward, and drove his knee into the man's stomach. The guard folded, gasping for air, but the other 3 were already on him. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution attempt. Blows rained down on Dae-hyun. A staff struck his ribs. Another cracked against his shoulder. He staggered, dropping to one knee. "Stop!" Martha screamed, starting to run forward. "Stay back!" Dae-hyun roared, blood spraying from his split lip. He wasn't fighting like a martial artist anymore. He was fighting like a cornered animal. He caught a swinging staff in his bare hand, ignoring the friction burn. He twisted it, snapping the wood in half. He drove the jagged end into the second guard's thigh. The man screamed and went down. Two left. Dae-hyun stood up. He was swaying. His white shirt was torn, revealing bruising that was already darkening his skin. He wiped the blood from his eye so he could see. He looked at Martha. In that split second of distraction, the third guard swept his legs. Dae-hyun hit the floor hard. The fourth guard raised his staff high, aiming a killing blow at Dae-hyun's temple. "No." Martha's voice broke. Dae-hyun rolled. The staff shattered the floorboards where his head had been a second ago. He moved from the ground, launching himself upward in an uppercut that defied gravity. His fist connected with the guard's jaw, with a sickening crunch. The man was lifted off his feet and unconscious before he hit the ground. The last guard, the one with the broken thigh, tried to crawl away. Dae-hyun stood over him. He was breathing like a bellows, his chest heaving. Blood dripped from his nose onto the pristine floor. He turned to Madame Yi. He didn't speak. He just stared at her, his eyes burning with defiance. "I am still standing." Madame Yi set her teacup down. It was the only sound in the room. "Sloppy," she critiqued, her face impassive. "You relied too much on rage. You left your left side open." She stood up, smoothing her silk robes. She walked over to Dae-hyun, stopping inches from him. She reached up and touched his bruised face. "But," she softened, "pain is a good teacher." She turned to Martha. "He has paid for your life with his blood. The debt is settled." Madame Yi reached into her sleeve and pulled out a small, heavy iron key. She pressed it into Dae-hyun's bloody hand. "Kwon-woo is operating out of the shipping yards. Terminal 4. He is moving a shipment tonight to finance his coup. If you take the shipment, you take his power." She looked at Luna, who was hiding her face in Martha's skirt. "Leave the child here. She will be safe. No one touches a guest in my house." Martha hesitated. She looked at the scary old woman, then at Dae-hyun, who was barely standing. Dae-hyun nodded once. "She is the safest person in Korea right now." Martha knelt down and kissed Luna's forehead. "Mommy has to go help the bad man become a good man. I will be back. I promise." She stood up and walked to Dae-hyun. She took the handkerchief from his pocket, the one he had given her in the car, and dabbed the blood from his lip. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. Dae-hyun caught her hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were intense. "Yes," he rasped. "I did." He turned to the door. "Let's go. It's time to end this." The shipping yard was a labyrinth of rust and steel. Stacks of shipping containers rose like skyscrapers into the stormy night, creating narrow, flooding canyons between them. The rain here was horizontal, whipped by the wind coming off the dark ocean. It smelled of salt, diesel, and rotting fish. Dae-hyun moved slower now. The adrenaline from Madame Yi's trial was fading, replaced by the throbbing ache of broken ribs. He held his side, his breath hitching with every step. "We shouldn't be here," Martha whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "You're hurt. We should call the police." "The police work for Kwon-woo tonight," Dae-hyun grit out. "Terminal 4. It's just ahead." They reached the clearing. Under the harsh glare of halogen floodlights, a crane was lowering a massive crate onto a truck. Men in raincoats stood guard with assault rifles. And there, standing under a black umbrella held by a subordinate, was Kwon-woo. He looked like Dae-hyun, but distorted. Where Dae-hyun was sharp and controlled, Kwon-woo was jagged and loud. He wore a white fur coat that was already splattered with mud at the hem. He was laughing. Dae-hyun pulled Martha behind a blue container. "Stay here. When the shooting starts, run back to the car." "No," Martha grabbed his arm. "You can't fight an army." "I don't have to fight them all," Dae-hyun said, checking his gun. "Just the king." He stepped out into the light. "Kwon-woo!" The name tore through the sound of the rain. The activity stopped. The guards raised their rifles. Kwon-woo turned slowly, a wide, shark-like grin spreading across his face. "Brother," Kwon-woo shouted, opening his arms. "I thought you were Ash. I was just about to pour a drink to your memory." "Call off your dogs." Dae-hyun walked forward, limping slightly. This ends between us. Kwon-woo laughed. He snapped his fingers. 2 guards rushed Dae-hyun from the side. Dae-hyun fired bang, bang dropping one, but his injury slowed him. The second guard slammed a rifle butt into his bad ribs. Dae-hyun crumbled. He hit the wet asphalt, gasping, the gun skittering away. Kwon-woo walked over, his expensive shoes splashing in the puddles. He kicked Dae-hyun in the face, hard. Dae-hyun rolled onto his back, coughing blood. You always were the favorite, Kwon-woo spat, looking down at him. Grandmother's golden boy. The honorable gangster. Look at you now. Dying in the mud. Kwon-woo pulled a gold-plated Desert Eagle from his coat. He aimed it at Dae-hyun's heart. Any last words? Brother? Yes. Dae-hyun wheezed, looking past Kwon-woo's shoulder. Duck. Kwon-woo frowned. What? Screech. The massive crane overhead groaned. Martha was in the cabin. She didn't know how to operate the machinery, but she knew which lever released the clamp. She yanked the red lever. The 2-ton shipping container plummeted. It didn't hit Kwon-woo. He dove out of the way just in time, but it smashed into the truck and the guards behind him. The impact shook the ground like an earthquake, sending a shockwave of water and debris into the air. Kwon-woo scrambled to his feet, disoriented, covered in mud. Dae-hyun didn't waste the second chance. He lunged for his loose gun. Kwon-woo saw him. He swung his gold pistol wildly, but he didn't aim at Dae-hyun. He aimed at the crane cabin. At Martha. You brought a whore to a war? Kwon-woo screamed. He fired. The glass of the crane cabin shattered. Martha! Dae-hyun screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated horror. The sound of shattering glass was louder than the gunshot. It rained down from the crane cabin like jagged diamonds. Dae-hyun didn't scream again. The part of him that was human died in that second. The only thing left was the monster. He didn't look at Kwon-woo. He looked at the gun in his own hand. He raised it. Kwon-woo tried to fire again, but his hand was shaking. He saw the look in Dae-hyun's eyes. It was the look of a man who had already lost everything. Brother, wait, Kwon-woo stammered. Bang. The shot took Kwon-woo in the knee. He screamed, dropping the gold pistol, collapsing into the mud. Dae-hyun walked forward. He didn't run. He walked with the terrifying slowness of a funeral procession. You touched her, Dae-hyun whispered. It wasn't a question. He stood over his brother. The rain washed the mud from Kwon-woo's white coat, turning it gray. I am the king, Kwon-woo shrieked, clutching his shattered leg. You can't kill the king. I don't want to be king, Dae-hyun said, aiming the gun between his brother's eyes. I just want to be hers. Bang. The silence that followed was absolute. Dae-hyun dropped the gun. He scrambled up the ladder of the crane, ignoring the agony in his ribs. He tore the door open. Martha! She was curled in the corner of the small cabin, covered in glass shards. Her hands were over her head. Slowly she lowered them. Blood trickled from a shallow cut on her forehead, dripping onto her dark skin. But her eyes were open. She was breathing. The bullet had missed her by inches, embedding itself in the control panel. Dae-hyun fell to his knees. He pulled her into his chest, burying his face in her neck. He was shaking. The man who had just executed his own brother without blinking was trembling like a leaf. I'm okay, she whispered, her hand finding the back of his wet hair. I'm okay, I thought. Dae-hyun's voice broke. He pulled back, framing her face with his blood-stained hands. Never again. You are never leaving my sight again. 6 months later, the sun over Jeju Island was warm, smelling of salt and tangerines. The villa sat on a private cliffside, surrounded by high walls and higher security. Dae-hyun sat on the terrace, watching the garden. He wore a linen shirt, relaxed, but his eyes were still sharp, scanning the horizon. Old habits didn't die, they just changed purpose. In the grass, Luna was chasing a golden retriever puppy. She was laughing, a sound that filled the empty spaces in Dae-hyun's soul. Martha walked out onto the terrace, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. She wore a white dress that flowed in the breeze. She looked like peace. She looked like redemption. She sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. He immediately wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. The scar on his hand from the warehouse fight brushed against her skin. Madam Yi called, Dae-hyun said softly. She says the syndicate is stable. Profits are up. Does she want you back? Martha asked, tracing the line of his jaw. She asks every week. Dae-hyun kissed the top of her head. I told her I'm retired. I have a more important job now. Oh. Martha smiled, looking up at him. And what is that? Dae-hyun looked at Luna playing in the grass. Then he looked at Martha. His eyes, once cold and dead, were warm. Keeper of the light, he whispered. He leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that tasted of lemons and survival. The world could burn for all he cared. He had saved the only parts of it that mattered. Thank you so much for listening. Your presence means everything to me. If this story hit you the way I hoped it would, subscribe to this channel. I've got more stories about dangerous men who fell harder than they ever thought possible.